Sorry about that. I think I sort of inadvertently somehow deleted the last stream I just set up by going live with it. So I'm not exactly sure how that works, but apparently that's what happened. So please forgive me for that. And hopefully there was a bunch of y'all waiting in the stream, and I apologize for dumping you guys like that. I didn't mean to. Like, I hit the go live button and then it just died, and it wasn't even in my list anymore. So I don't know, man. Go figure. But I didn't mean to dump y'all like that. Like, what a pain. Don't you just love the new and improved YouTube stuff, man? It's like, never had these problems before, and it's like, with the relatively new user interface, it's like always something, man. But I think we're live. If y'all are able to find my stream again, let me know if you can hear me. Yeah, sorry about that. I think I dumped you guys. Didn't mean to. Anyway, I set up this new stream, same thing, just for whatever reason, I deleted that last stream. So sorry. I hope y'all are having a good weekend. Wanted to do a stream to let y'all know that the vast majority of the immediate rent is solved. So, oh great, so now is my internet crapping out? Is that what's going on here? Hey guys, throw me up something in the chat if I'm still live, please. I would greatly appreciate it. Either my laptop just crapped out or my phone did. Yeah, sorry, man. This is the second one. The first one got deleted somehow. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but yeah, I guess we are good to go. I guess we are definitely live. Thanks, Yude. Yeah, I inadvertently, it seems like I must have deleted it. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but apparently it was my fault. I hit the go live button and it deleted the stream. So we're good though. It's always something, man. I'm telling you. At least I'm not NASA, because it's hard to be NASA, as they say. Cool. Thanks. No to I am. No to I am. All right. So yeah, man, I hope y'all are doing well. And I guess I was just saying, it seemed like the thing got crapped out, but so I was able to get the vast majority of the rent situation taken care of. So we should be good on that. I think we're going to survive. So appreciation to those of you that helped and have pledged to help. So thank you very much. Love you guys. So yeah, a few things I wanted to talk about. As the first off, always is going to be, at least while this crap is going on, prayers go up to our brothers and sisters in Gaza, man. Hopefully that crap ends. I mean, those are living, breathing human beings, man. You can't just go around dropping bombs on kids, man. Can't do that. That's war crimes. So any of these church leaders that are still saying to this day that we have to get on board and support Israel no matter what, y'all are full of it, man. You know, I support Israel as much as the next bloke over, but I don't support dropping bombs on children all day long. That's crazy. And anybody who tells me that I need to get on board with something like that, you know, keep it to yourself, man. For real. Anyways, so that's always first. Prayers go up for Gaza. What a depressing situation that is, ain't it? Those poor people, man. That's a crazy situation. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's terrible. Terrible. And you know, the sad thing is, the things that I want to say, it's like I really just can't. Like, I can't express myself freely, at least not on YouTube, because I just know that the things that I want to say are going to get misconstrued and then used against me somehow by YouTube to like strike my video, or I mean, it's there's a chilling effect. I mean, this is recent too, man. Like there's been a lot of this sort of rhetoric about like the Gestapo or whatever, but it really has gotten to the point, at least in my opinion, this day and age, where at least on these big platforms, you just can't say what's on your mind. And even if you don't have any bad intentions and you're not even really being that extreme or whatever, it's really gotten to the point where, well, first of all, people are just such snowflakes, and it's like, no matter what you say, you're always going to offend somebody. But then when it comes to these sort of rhetoric, narrative things, whether it's these wars or whatever, it's like if you don't, or things like Sandy Hook. I mean, I'm still getting ads to this day from Sandy Hook and these other sort of events. Whatever you think about these things, man, the problem is like we can't even talk about it. It's like even if your position on these issues isn't really that far on any end of the spectrum, you just can't talk about it. And that's scary to me. Like it's almost as if we've crossed a threshold, in my opinion, because like it didn't used to be like this. I don't know, and it's like these social media platforms have become such gatekeepers of information, but now also gatekeepers on our very thoughts and how we express ourselves online. And really, that was sort of, in my opinion, one of the greatest things about living in the future, was the fact that we, even just common, regular, everyday people, have the ability to express ourselves and share our ideas with people all over the world without any sort of barriers or censors in between, what we're trying to share with you guys, with the world, and, the ears out there that want to hear it, right? The people that want to hear it. And more and more, these days, it's gotten to the point where that is just not the same anymore. It appears that not only are there barriers in between the things that I say and the people that want to hear what I have to say, but now it's almost like there's barriers in between the things that I think and the things that I want to say, which is, to me, that's scary. Like, I don't know. So, anyways, when it comes to this stuff with flat Earth, that's always been a taboo topic, but I think it's a super important one, man. Like, still to this day, I mean, I've been a globe Earth skeptic since 2015. That was when I first did the first video. And even now, 8 years later or whatever, it's something that I still feel very strongly about, because in my opinion, it changes the world by changing individuals. Like, once a person realizes this one, it unlocks something in a person that, in my opinion, was dormant before. And it's this sort of discerning spirit where the truth is sort of an end in and of itself. And I wouldn't say that, we would justify all means to that end, but it's like we don't have, or at least in my opinion, we don't have the sort of fetters or the blinders on that we once did for a lot of things, because we're now able to very much introspectively revisit our beliefs that we've held for a long time and question those things without being ashamed of ourselves. Like, for whatever reason, it seems like there's a lot of shame on people for questioning things. And that's sort of like religious dogmas all across the board. And whether it's Christian religious dogmas or scientism religious dogmas, right? So these principles of scientism, where they will try to shame you, and people are ashamed of asking questions about our belief system and really observing the world around us and judging, using our God-given senses, judging whether or not the world around us that we can observe matches what we've been told in school. And so many of us we've always had a sneaking suspicion about this nonsense, with the ball Earth. So many of us, I remember, like, a lot of people got that in school. Like, a lot of this stuff that they're saying about ball Earth is stupid, but like, we never in a million years would we have thought to take it to this hypothesis, like, well, maybe the Earth's flat and stationary, right? Like, that concept is so far beyond the pale of what normal, rational, well-educated people would even think, right, to imagine. And so we don't, like, it got past us, man. But once we realize that there is no sort of shame in asking these questions, and there is no shame in questioning these beliefs, it really does fall apart quite flimsily, like a house of cards. Yeah, happy flatter day for sure. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on today, because it needs to be discussed, like there's so many different elements of static plane Earth truth that you can talk about. It's almost like it's hard to know where to start. But one thing that I think is probably one of the most important things is in the astronomical sort of genre, if you will, because beyond the fact that the Earth measurably doesn't have the necessary curvature and it doesn't have the necessary astronomical motion, rotational and orbital motions, none of that exists. Like whenever it's measured for, there is no physical evidence for geological curvature or rotational motion. But one of the first places that people want to point to is the stars. People want to point to astronomical observations in order to sort of make the case for spinning ball Earth, which, in my opinion, it really isn't even necessary. But so many people are hung up on astronomy. It's something that we have to deal with because, not only do astronomical observations not work on the ball Earth sort of model, the Copernican theory model, but these same observations work perfectly on the alternate sort of static plane Earth model. And I think even more importantly, when it comes to these astronomical observations, are eclipses in general, but namely solar eclipses. And for one reason. Everything that has to do with astronomical observations are very much in the realm of the intangible, right? So in terms of starlight or even the light from the wandering stars, the planets, it's not something that you can pick up and observe and like look at all sides of it, right? In terms of starlight, you know what I mean? But when it comes to solar eclipses, what are you doing?
Turn my channel, but change my channel.
Okay, you want me to do it?
Please.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Kind of lost my train of thought there. What the hell was I even saying? Okay, so solar eclipses are unique in all of these other sort of astronomical observations for one reason, because when the moon casts a shadow upon the face of the Earth, this is one of the only situations in all of nature where we can physically examine, almost in a way tangibly examine, astronomical events, if that makes sense. So the shadow of the moon being cast upon the Earth during a solar eclipse is unique in all of astronomical observation for this very reason. And what's very interesting, first and foremost, about solar eclipses is, so usually the totality of the eclipse, or like the direct shadow of the moon, is usually about, so let's say like 100 miles in diameter. Sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's more than 100, but give or take, it varies. The shadow of the moon during a solar eclipse is very small indeed relative to what they are claiming the moon's actual physical size is, which they claim is like 2,000 miles in diameter or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So that right there is a huge problem for the ball Earth theory, because like if you think about it, they're claiming that the moon is 250,000 miles away. And then on top of that, they're claiming that the sun is like 93 million miles away or whatever, right? So the last thing that you would expect would be for the shadow of the moon to be basically a pinprick compared to the size of the moon, according to the heliocentric theory. And in fact, there's a few examples where this shadow of the moon during solar eclipses is like 2 or 3 miles in diameter. Super tiny. This is a huge problem. And, you know, the reason I bring this sort of thing up is because globe Earth proponents seem to take it for granted. And I hear the argument a lot coming from the other side of this debate, that astronomical observations not only work on a globe Earth, but are exclusive to a globe Earth. So there's just so many examples where astronomical observations are claimed to exclusively prove the ball Earth theory. And it's like, well, name one, you know what I mean? Name one. But then certainly, like I would say that there are so many astronomical observations that absolutely do not work according to the ball Earth theory. It's really quite amazing that they've gone this far as they have with the lie, because it is so absurd and it is so counterintuitive. Like all sorts of observations fly in the face of the heliocentric theory. And the reason that it's been allowed to go so far, in my opinion, is because the average person never questions these core beliefs that we were raised with, sort of instilled with in the federal indoctrination system. And furthermore, when it comes to, like, you know, higher education, so-called scientists, they also never revisit and skeptically question their beliefs. Like, they only go further and deeper into the nonsensical, fantastical theory, but they never skeptically question any of those base principles that we just take for granted. And the sad, God's honest truth is, when you actually start to question these things, they fall apart. Like, they truly do. And eclipses, so the size of the moon's shadow during a solar eclipse is just one thing. That's a huge problem, because again, like, if you've ever played with light and shadow, if you've got a light source that's extremely far away, and then an object that's also pretty damn far away casting a shadow, that shadow is going to be, really, it should be huge. But But instead, what we see in reality is a very obviously local event. Like when eclipses occur, it's very localized. Like you could be standing, a few hundred miles away from where an eclipse is totally like in its totality, and you won't see hardly any of it. Like it won't be a total eclipse for like the entire side of the globe as you would think. Like it's very counterintuitive. But not only is it counterintuitive, when you see the evidence, like the shadow of the moon being sometimes as small as 2 or 3 miles in diameter during these eclipse events, frankly, it goes right out the window. Like it's absolutely absurd. And then you have conundrums within their very own narrative when it comes to these eclipses. So what they've done in order to explain away these very teeny tiny shadows of the moon during solar eclipses, they have invented this theory involving the umbra and penumbra deal, where essentially what they're saying is happening is really quite the opposite of how light and shadows work. They say that the light from the sun is basically converging in on itself to a point and then diverging away from that point, and somehow creating this sort of conical pinpointer of a shadow cast by the moon onto the earth, right? Just the total opposite of how light works. Like light spreads out and attenuates with distance, but they're saying that it's doing the exact opposite of this to explain away the fact that we have these pinpointer shadows cast by the moon during eclipses, right? But again, like, first of all, not only is this counterintuitive, but part of their whole you've heard the story, the just so tale of Eratosthenes, right? Where it's claimed that the ancient Greek Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the ball Earth in like 300 BC, so thousands of years ago. The ancient Greeks knew the Earth was a ball thousands of years ago because of Eratosthenes. It's one of their go-to arguments. But the thing is in order for Eratosthenes' argument or calculations to work, one big part of that is the notion, or the axiom really, that the light from the sun is attacking the Earth at parallel angles, right? So in order for the whole Syene and Alexandria just so story that they claim was Eratosthenes' experiment, in order for that so-called spherical trigonometry to work, you have to have parallel sun rays. But on the other hand, in order to have pinpointer of a shadow during solar eclipses, then you have to have the exact opposite of parallel sun rays, and you have to have these oddly and strangely diverging and converging sun rays that cause the moon's shadow to taper off into a point, right? So the equivalent of what they're saying is going on is like, let's say, so you've got a big spotlight, say on the other end of a football court, a big old like Batman spotlight, right? And you're shining this big spotlight across a football field from end zone to end zone, and you've got a little basketball-sized object representing the moon. Basically, what they're saying is the shadow cast from that basketball-sized object is tapering off into a point the size like smaller than a penny, right? That's basically what they're saying is going on. And it's so nonsensical. It's so absurd. But again, like, if we caught these sort of discrepancies in the narrative growing up, and a lot of us did catch these sorts of things, for whatever reason, it goes in one ear and out the other. Like, we just apologize for the ball indefinitely, even though all sorts of, physical problems come with it. So yeah, another big issue with eclipses. So again, the Eratosthenes conundrum with the whole convergent, divergent, umbra penumbra thing, then that's a big problem. That's a big contradiction for their narrative, but it's chock full of these sorts of things. If you actually dig deeper into just scrutinizing, like when we observe eclipses, does it jive with what they're telling us? Absolutely not. So during a solar eclipse, you have to have a perfect alignment upon the ecliptic plane of the sun, the moon, then the earth, all in a perfect straight line, right? On the ecliptic plane. And basically, there's only one point in space where the moon has to basically thread this needle and hit this point in space just perfectly. This is why eclipses are so rare, where the moon transits the sun, which is millions and millions of miles away. And so what this means is, really, there's only one point on the earth where that shadow could ever be, okay? Because you're dealing with just a straight line on the ecliptic plane. And where that point should be is it should be directly aligned to solar noon. So like the point on the earth where the sun is directly overhead at solar noon. And furthermore, whichever latitude is currently aligned to the ecliptic plane. So like during the northern summer solstice, then the latitude would be towards the north, like say the Tropic of Cancer. And during the southern summer solstice, then that point would be aligned to the Tropic of Capricorn. And if you were closer to the equinox, it would be right at the equator. But like the only point where that shadow of the moon could be would be at solar noon, at whichever latitude is currently aligned to the ecliptic plane, depending on the solstice or whatever. And frankly, what we see with eclipses is absolutely not that. We see eclipse signatures that occur early in the morning, late in the afternoon. We see eclipse signatures which traverse the literal polar areas, so like the Arctic circles on both sides. These sort of hard and fast geometric rules that the standard model should definitely adhere to, if it were true, are broken in terms of these basic observations of eclipses. So again, the fact that we don't see solar eclipses only at this point at solar noon that is currently aligned to the ecliptic plane, depending on the season, totally destroys the ball Earth theory. It debunks it all in one fell swoop. We frankly just don't have this alignment on the ecliptic plane that they're claiming is occurring to produce solar eclipses. Eclipses are, in my opinion, the creator's signature. And it's like the creator ain't gonna lie about this. I mean, it's pretty obvious once you understand these issues with eclipses. It's like, again, it surprises me how the deceivers made it as far as they did with the lie. I mean, it's insidious, man. I guess it's not amazing really, because the way that they did it was they got us when we were young with it. And that right there, like, wow. Like it takes, like, I don't believe how even a human entity could be responsible for intentionally deceiving generations and generations of children in order to control and more easily control society when it comes to all sorts of other deceptions, just running the gambit, right? But if you study mind control and MK Ultra and really like advertising or PR, if you study that propaganda, you'll find that people are most easily mind controlled if you can conflict their core belief systems. So if you can have someone totally confounded at their core beliefs, sort of walking around in a constant state of cognitive dissonance, then you can basically convince that person of all sorts of things. And especially when you convince that person that basically the world is very secular, the concept of a supernatural creator is like really frowned upon according to the standard narrative, because like you've got infinite space and evolution, and so a god or a creator is very silly according to the infinite space sort of Copernican principle. But when you realize that's all a deception in order to mind control people, it makes a lot of sense, because if you can convince people that the world itself is insignificant, and if you can convince them that life in general is insignificant, then and confound their core beliefs, you can convince people to do pretty much anything, like slave their lives away for fiat currency, right? Which that's a whole nother ball of can of worms, ain't it? But of course, the fiat currency is just another mechanism to basically siphon our energy, siphon our wealth from the people to a very small group of elites that are running the Federal Reserve scam, or I should say the non-federal, non-reserve scam. It's very insidious. Like, it's all definitely intra-connected. The Great Deception, the Grand Delusion didn't come about by accident, right? So multi-generational scams where 99% of the people are treated like cattle and beasts of burden and deceived into basically all of these bizarre actions that we talk about. It's very insidious. Like, it's I just don't see how human beings could be sitting on top of a structure that's responsible for that end result. And so according to the Bible, we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. We're wrestling against spiritual wickedness, the principalities of this world, and evil entities in high places, right? And I think there really is something to that. And how do you want to couch that? Like, so is it reptilian shapeshifters, like David Icke says? I mean, maybe. Is it fallen angels? Is it something in between? I think that all of that stuff is definitely on the table. And from the perspective of a flat earther, where we don't have infinite space, there is no aliens coming from light years away, we very potentially have more land beyond our known realm. And so the concept of extraterrestrials becomes palpable. Like, they actually are now in the realm of possibility, as opposed to theoretically being, millions of light years away or whatever. I think the concept of these sort of reptilian overlords or archons becomes far more plausible in a static planar hypothesis, right? I mean, if we're going to go there. And frankly, I know a lot of very sane, logical people that believe in spinning ball Earth and Copernican infinite space, and believe that there are, like the whole Anunnaki alien agenda thing, right? The ancient aliens shtick, right? And frankly, I can't get on board with that per se. Like, they're definitely not coming from space, but for all we know, there could be humanoid entities that live beyond our known realm, right here on the same plane that we live on, just in a different area of the realm, or maybe a different geothermal pocket along the plane somewhere, definitely parallel to the ground and not off in space, right? But yeah, man, it's, they didn't, the point is they didn't lie to everyone for generations by accident. So there is definitely an intelligence behind this grand delusion, this great deception that is very much anti-human, right? I don't know what else to call it other than anti-human. Anyway. Solar eclipses is a big problem, and just to balance it out a bit, There are similar things you can say about lunar eclipses in terms of the sort of coordinates on the ecliptic plane that they should be aligned to. And frankly, so like lunar eclipses should be, there should be a point in space where lunar eclipses should only ever always happen, which would be basically, again, at the anti-meridian of solar noon and at whichever latitude is currently aligned to the ecliptic plane. That's where it would be most visible from. And frankly, we don't see that either. But without getting too deep into lunar eclipses, really the only thing that you have to say to totally debunk the standard model of lunar eclipses is the selenelion. God, that's hideous. I don't know if y'all can hear that. Absolutely hideous. But the selenelion, so what the selenelion is during a lunar eclipse, sometimes, not always, but sometimes the moon and the sun are visible for the entire time during a totality of a total lunar eclipse. So both the sun, I'm dropping everything, both the sun and the moon are visible overhead during a total lunar eclipse for the entire thing. Okay, and what they're saying is going on is you're supposed to have a straight line alignment between the sun, the earth, and the moon along a straight line alignment, right? And so the fact that you're standing on a ball here and can see both the sun and the moon above the horizon at the same time during this alleged alignment doesn't make a lot of sense. And of course, the globetards apologize for this with refraction. You know, that's their magical get out of jail free card for everything is refraction. But it really, if you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. What's occurring during a lunar eclipse is simply not an alignment between the sun, the earth, and the moon. The earth is the physical plane on the bottom above which the sun and the moon are rotating above, apparently. Okay, so you're never going to have an alignment between the earth and the moon. Between the sun and the moon where the earth is in between them, right? That's just never going to happen. It's geometrically not possible, frankly, because the sun and the moon are in the sky. The sun and the moon are apparently celestial lights in the sky, whereas the earth is the physical plane of reality. And so there's never been a situation where the earth is aligned to the sun and the moon for an eclipse. It just doesn't work like that. It's something else. And there are some theories about what's actually causing lunar eclipses, but I observed a lunar eclipse a few years ago, and I actually did a couple videos on it. I live streamed while it was happening. It was the one that was the blood wolf moon or whatever a few years back, I think 2019 or so. And just what happened with the eclipse was so counterintuitive to the standard model, and it was very late at night as well. Like what happened was the shadow approached the moon from like this direction, and then the moon glowed red, and then the shadow that had come from that direction went back in the same direction that it came, and the moon went back to normal. And so like you're trying to wrap your brain about how that would work in the heliocentric model, and it doesn't. There's no it falls apart. So I think eclipses are really some of the best astronomical examples where the standard model just doesn't work, man. And once each individual person actually takes the time to revisit their belief in the ball and looks in detail at these things like eclipses, and there's so many other examples, the empirical evidence becomes overwhelming. And at some point, it's very difficult to continue apologizing for the globe. That's why I don't understand some of the people that just constantly and relentlessly defend the globe and attack flat earthers and accuse us of being deceivers and that sort of thing. Because just the evidence, man, is so ubiquitous and overwhelming. I don't know. It's frustrating. I mean, I get it. I get it, man. We were all deceived extremely insidiously when we were very young. And I just pray that, through my efforts and through the efforts of the community that, more and more people continue to wake up to this truth and wake up to the understanding that the earth is a special place and life is very special and unique. And God is real. The creator signature is everywhere. And I think when you recognize and realize flat earth, it brings you closer to that understanding. And so in that respect, it is very important. Now, eclipses are not the only astronomical problems either. So just a few other things. So the whole celestial navigation argument. Y'all are arguing about the 13-month calendar, huh? Sorry, I was missed out on the chat there. I see y'all are pretty active. It's just kind of hard to read so small. Anyway, so there's a lot of people arguing about celestial navigation, but that's another huge one. The celestial navigation requires underlying triangles in order to work. And the base of these triangles is always going to be a straight line. Therefore, the ball Earth cannot support celestial navigation even, because you simply can't have triangles built with curved edges. That's not how triangles work. And so celestial navigation requiring underlying triangles in order to function is yet another excellent proof against ball Earth. Made a video about that recently on my channel. So if you want the diagrams and the understanding of probably a better explanation than I'm doing now, definitely check that out. It's just celestial navigation requires a flat Earth. The North Star Polaris, we could go on for days about Polaris and the whole axial precession stick. Polaris is another good example where the heliocentric model fails to match observable reality, right? See, this is the thing. If infinite space was real and the Earth was really a ball spinning around and flying through space at a zillion miles an hour, as they claim, the heavens, the celestial lights, would be observably contiguous with that theory, right? And the fact of the matter is, with Polaris staying in its same place for all of recorded history, central to all the other stars, not showing any signs of motion or misalignment to our so-called axis of rotation, totally debunks the globe Earth hypothesis, man. And, the thing is, this is another one of those things that I myself remember having an issue with when I was a youngin', fully imbued with the belief in a spinning ball Earth. But it's like, any questions that we have about, well, okay, so if Polaris is aligned to the axis and the axis is rotating and we're spinning around the sun and flying in 5 different directions at once, how the hell does Polaris stay fixed above the axis for even a week, let alone thousands of years for all of recorded history? And what's so funny about this is the standard narrative claims that there has been a previous North Star and will be in the future some other different North Star, and it's constantly changing. But the problem is there's no evidence for that. And really, the evidence for that would be obvious. Like, I mean, I'm sorry to say, regardless of how far away you place Polaris, if the Earth is like a spinning top, sort of arbitrarily wobbling around and flying through space along curved trajectories, There's just absolutely no way that any point in space or any distant star could remain fixed above that axis as they're claiming. It's really quite ridiculous. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's frickin' absurd. And anyone that can't admit that that's a problem, that Polaris's centrality and alignment to the so-called axis, anyone that can't admit that that's a problem, I hate to say this, man, and no offense, but you're fucked in the head, okay? And if you're gonna argue against that without even understanding what the hell I'm saying, then you're not being honest with yourself. You know, and excuse the French, no more cussing. I apologize, but really, I mean it. So, you know, take me with a grain of salt, man. I get worked up. Then, of course, you know, if we're going to stay on the vein of astronomy, the consistency and constancy of all the constellations. The constellations are constant. Just like the horizon is horizontal, the constellations are constant. And again, you know, if we are flying through space at a zillion miles an hour, as they claim, and where all the stars are orbiting the galaxy and the galaxy's flying through space and there's other galaxies all over the place, the last thing we would ever expect is to have constellations that remain perfectly in their alignments and relative positions to one another for all of recorded history. Remember, guys, it was the ancients that developed the concept of the constellations, right? They haven't changed. And I love it. Globetrotters try to argue, well, how did you know they haven't changed? Because they've been documenting the stars and coming up with the constellations thousands of years ago. And frankly, you know, I've been around for decades, and there haven't been any changes to the relative positions of the stars between one another. And frankly, over decades, there should be major sweeping parallax between, you know, the stars that are closest to you versus the stars that are allegedly furthest away, light years and hundreds of light years away. There hasn't been any observable stellar sweeping parallax because their model's wrong. The infinite space heliocentric hypothesis falls apart yet again because of the fact that constellations don't ever change their relative positions to one another. And yet again, it just baffles me to hear people make statements like, well, astronomical observations only work on a globe. I mean, it's just nonsense, man, that you haven't thought this through. And I wish that people that make those kind of claims in the comments would think this through before they just disagree with us. And I know it's easy to just disagree with me because what I'm saying goes against the grain. It goes against what we were all taught. But again, if you're honest with yourself, you will remember being incredulous with all sorts of claims about the globe, you know, starting with, you know, the pressurized air existing here on the ground and adjacent to the vacuum of space at 60 miles up at the Kármán line. That's a problem. And what's holding all the air in? Nothing but gravity, you know, a non-force acceleration that is held together by nothing, space-time, right? Total Narnia. That's all they've got is these fairy tales that they convinced us of when we were little kids, man. And you know, that's fucked up. Excuse my language. Sorry. Really, that's the last time I cussed. That's messed up though, man. I'm sorry. Forgive me. But that's messed up. You know, I've said this before, but one of the only threats that I can remember finding in the Bible from Jesus, from Yeshua, is about deceiving the kids, deceiving the children. And it's something about a millstone around your neck and being cast into the sea, right? Yeshua didn't talk like that much, right? He didn't make a whole lot of threats. So when dude did make a threat like that about deceiving the children, I would take it pretty seriously, honestly. And I would walk on eggshells to not deceive children about, especially things of that importance, right? So I've already mentioned in this talk how the belief in spinning ball Earth directly coalesces with our generational loss of faith in the Creator and faith in ourselves as divinely created beings, created in the image of the Most High, Creator of all things. And I know, so another thing, so here's another big heliocentric model killer is, again, the seasonal variance of visible space. So because of the fact that they're claiming that, so here you've got the ecliptic plane with the sun in the middle, and this plane represents the entire orbital path of the Earth over the course of a year. So they're saying the Earth goes around the sun on this plane once a year. And what this means is visible space would be opposite the sun, according to an observer on Earth. Visible space should change directions in the universe every 6 months. So like in the winter, visible space should be over here. And in the summer, visible space should be over here. And we would have equatorial stars, or like the zodiac stars that would be exclusive to certain seasons. And frankly, we don't see that either. Like, we don't see this seasonal exclusivity of stars that we should if the heliocentric model was true. And instead, what we do see is we see yet again the localized celestial lights. That we're not dealing with a celestial sphere in all directions. We're dealing with local celestial lights that go in circuits around the North Pole, going in circuits around Polaris. But we don't have this we don't have 6 months swapping of which direction in the universe visible space is. Again, we just don't. Natural observations do not match the heliocentric theory because, ladies and gentlemen, it isn't real. It's a fantasy, right? And the final thing, I know some people that would be very upset with me if I didn't mention, you can't even measure angles, so when we talk about like using a sextant, so this might go with the celestial navigation argument as well. But you can't even measure elevation angles to celestial lights without a flat Earth. You've got to have a flat, horizontal, straight baseline in order to measure an angle. You can't measure an angle from a spherical surface. It defies the definition of an angle. So yeah, when it boils right down to it, you guys, and this is just a few things. There's all sorts of problems with astronomy that don't jive with the heliocentric model. I think I just named 5 or 6 things. I wouldn't be surprised if I could name a dozen. I'm not going to do that to you guys, but I just jotted down a few things because I don't know. I try to go back and forth with as many people as I can in the comments, typing out comments and stuff. But after a while, like once I just get tired of making some of the same arguments with some of the same people over and over again, it's just easier for me to do a video so that they can then argue with me about a bunch of new things in the comments too. I guess I'm being facetious, but Clifton Chandler says, if I cuss as part of a regular conversation, you give up the specific words we all agree mean danger. And so no one can tell the difference between you being deeply upset and only mildly. Yeah, no, I think I wouldn't say deeply upset, but I would say mildly upset. Yeah. I mean, I hate to put a filter on words, but I know sometimes there's kids watching. And so it's, I can't see all of y'all. So who knows? Hopefully there's not too many kids watching a flat Earth video on a Saturday, right? But thank you guys for hanging out with me, man. I just wanted to get a few things there off my chest. I got some projects cooking up, so just be patient with me. I've got 2 things I'm working on. One's going to be a mud flood video, and one is flat Earth related. So just my computer's a mofo to work with, so bear with me. Love you guys. Thank you very much for all your support and encouragement, and we'll talk to you very soon. All right, y'all. Bye.